Welcome back to Old School Sports and our OOTP 23 playthrough of the Kansas City Royals. The Royals have just concluded a very successful regular season. In fact, the most successful regular season since we took over this team in our 12 seasons. The 104-58 record is the best we've ever put up by one game. The Royals are going to have home field advantage for as long as they are in the playoffs this year. So, really good season, and it was good time for it because the goal of ownership this year is to win the championship and build a dynasty. So we have a fair amount of pressure on us as the Royals get prepared for the playoffs. The injury situation is not horrible. Ricky Venasco has been gone for the year for a long time. Gordon Graceffo missed the last couple weeks of the regular season, but should be back to be our number 4 starter in the playoffs. We will be missing the excellent rookie Aragetto Laziosi, strained PCL, out for about 5 weeks. So we're holding out hope that maybe he'll recover a little quickly, and if we can make it into the World Series, maybe Laziosi will be able to help with us then. But probably not going to have the youngster who hit .313, which was third in the American League this year in his first full year in the majors. And besides those three, Angelo Bolden, starting catcher, dealing with a stomach virus, going to impact him for 3 days, but since we have a first-round bye, not an issue. And then Bryce Hubbard has been dealing with forearm tendonitis. He's out for about another week, so it's conceivable if he doesn't recover from that quickly, he may not be on the playoff roster for the ALDS. If we go down to 12 pitchers, he's kind of one of the guys who's on the bubble anyways, so we'll see what his health looks like going forward. And I think we've got a general plan for the playoff roster. We are going to, as we have in some past seasons, go with 12 pitchers and 14 position players, switch it up a little bit from the 13 and 13 we typically go with in the regular season. Feel like with the off days of the playoff series, it's pretty unlikely that we're going to blow through that many pitchers. So the rotation is going to be Borgman, Lagerwell, Jacobs, and Graceffo as our 4 starters. And then in the bullpen, we've got Tyler Bosma, Dabovich, Diaz, Lesko, Perdomo, Sanchez, Williams, and Cronin. Bryce Hubbard, as I mentioned, is banged up with that forearm tendonitis. If he is healthy, he may go back onto the roster. I would think that Yeifer Perdomo would probably be the one whose spot was in jeopardy if Hubbard is healthy. And then Mackenzie Gore didn't end up making the playoff roster. Had a 4.96 ERA in 16 and a third innings, and he was kind of the odd man out. Aveyar and Bolden are our catchers. The infield, we've got Flores at second, Witt at third, Fonseca at short, and then Aiden Harris, Rich Alvarado kind of manning first base for us. Ton of depth with our outfielders and DHs. Cruz and Vasquez cover left field and DH. Angelo Velasquez will be our center fielder. And then Alejandro Osuna will be playing in right most likely. And then with Junior Marin, Orlando Soto, and Ishmael Zavala, got a right-handed bat, a left-handed bat, and a switch hitter as kind of some of our top pinch hitters coming off the bench. So I feel like there's a lot of flexibility in that lineup for Byron Nichols to use. Not quite the same flexibility as if we had the brilliant Laziosi, who can play second, third, and short at a pretty high level, but as I said, it's unlikely he's going to be back from this strained PCL in time to help us, even if we make it to the World Series. But we are holding out hope that the number 98 prospect in the game and a potential Rookie of the Year candidate hasn't played his last baseball of the season yet. And the Royals are going to have a somewhat familiar foe in the ALDS facing the Angels, who we finished up the season against. You can see Vlad Guerrero Jr., now an Angel, so on the team where his father, about 30 years earlier, won a World Series. So should be an interesting series for these Royals. If you look at the playoff tree, the Angels beat the Twins. The White Sox upset the Yankees. Cubs beat the Padres, and the Diamondbacks beat the Cardinals. So the 400-win teams, the Royals, the Mariners, the Nationals, and the Giants all will begin their first playoff action over the next couple of days. And Bryce Hubbart is healthy as the playoffs begin, and we are actually going to move Angel Sanchez off of the playoff roster, put Hubbart onto the playoff roster. I know I talked earlier about maybe Yeifer Perdomo, but as I looked at the playoff roster, we've got 4 right-handed starters with Borgman, Lagerwell, Jacobs, and Graceffo, and putting Hubbart onto the team will give us 4 lefties and 4 righties coming out of the bullpen. So I think that kind of maximizes the potential flexibility for manager Byron Nichols to hopefully make good decisions and play the matchups over the next few days. So we are going to kick off this series and hopefully make quick work of these Angels. I mentioned that we did play them in the last 4 games of the year. We ended up splitting that 4-game series in Anaheim, lost the first game, actually split a doubleheader, and then won the final game of the year 6-3. So hopefully having the home field advantage for the first couple of the games of this series will allow us to get out to a 2-0 lead, and then hopefully move on to play either Seattle or I can't even remember who at this point. The White Sox, that's right, our other division rival. Hopefully we can move on to the ALCS, but got to take 3 out of 5 in the division series before that will become a reality. And taking a look at these matchups, the Royals were 6th in the AL in runs scored, best pitching, first in the AL, allowing just 619 runs this season. The Angels had a better offense than us, 3rd in the league with 844 runs, and they were 5th in runs against. They went 91-71, but they did have a 5-2 record against us. Interesting. We split that 4-game series, but apparently they swept us 3-0 earlier in the season, which I had missed. So although we had a better record during the regular season, the Angels certainly look like a team that might have our number. So we'll see what happens. Our ace, Ben Borgman, on the mound, 13-5 record, 3.23 ERA. For the Royals this year, going up against a pretty good pitcher in Alex Madrigal, 13-9, 3.61 ERA over 216 2/3 innings. So a good pitching matchup between Borgman and Madrigal to start off this American League Division Series. And big win for the Royals, 10-1 victory. Only 1 homer by Alex Vasquez, but Borgman obviously pitched well in a 10-1 win, really well. 3 hits and 3 walks, 1 earned run over 7 1/3. Perdomo came on and struck out 4 in an inning and 2/3 to close things out for us. Vasquez, as I mentioned, had the homer, 2 for 5 with 5 ribbies. Couple ribbies from Bobby Witt Jr., couple runs scored from Osuna and Fonseca. So can't ask for a better start to the series than a 10-1 win, and we'll see what happens in Game 2. We've got Caleb Lagerwell, who hasn't been winning as many games these last few years, although he's still putting up typical Caleb Lagerwell seasons, 33 starts, 3.58 ERA over 196 1/3 innings, but surprising for a 104-win team with that type of pitching performance. Only a 9-9 record, 3.1 WAR, 3.44 SIERA. So another nice vintage Caleb Lagerwell season. And Logan Henderson looks like a pretty impressive pitcher on the mound for the Angels. Only an 8-5 record, pitched just 17 games for the Angels after he came over from Milwaukee, so it looks like he was a big acquisition approaching the trade deadline. 3.95 ERA with that 8-5 record over 118 1/3 innings, was much more effective with the Angels than he was with the Brewers, and certainly has the profile of a very good starting pitcher, as well as the paycheck of a very good starting pitcher, making $26 million a year. So another good pitching matchup, Game 2 here in Kansas City. and the Angels get the best of us. Homers for Cruz and the youngster Rich Alvarado, but it looks like Lagerwell probably got knocked around a little bit. Got knocked around a lot, actually. 7 earned runs over 4 1/3 innings, so not a great playoff performance from Lagerwell. After that, Dabovich, Hubbard, and Williams were all fine, but they'd given up way too much at that point to be effective. Cruz and Alvarado with the home runs obviously are the ones who drove in the runs for us. So not a great start to the series to split here and home. Obviously the hope and the requirement is that we get at least a split when we head out to California. And it's probably going to be another good pitching matchup. I'll check on what Jack Flaherty did, but we know that Zach Jacobs won the American League ERA title for us. 16-5 record over 181 innings pitched, 4.1 WAR on the season, 3.97 SIERA. This is a guy who was our 5th-round pick back in 2023, and he picked a perfect time to be heading into free agency. He's probably going to make a lot of money this offseason, and we're probably going to have a tough time bringing him back after that season that he just put up. We'll check in on what Flaherty did this year. 37 years old now, still pretty effective though. 13-9 record, 3.79 ERA. So we've had some good pitching matchups in, at least on paper, in this series. Although quite honestly, the games have both been a little bit blowout. Certainly, the 10-1 win for us was a blowout, and going down 7 runs early with the way that Lagerwell pitched, that game 2 probably felt like a blowout. Let's hope that Jacobs can outpitch Flaherty in Anaheim today. And he can't. So the backs are already up against the wall for the Royals. Flaherty pitched okay, 2 earned runs over 5 innings. Jacobs pitched fine, 2 earned runs over 6 1/3. Bryce Hubbard, who we had was the last guy that we added to the roster, he got rocked, and then Dylan Lesko came on and got rocked also. So ugly performance by our bullpen in that 9-2 loss. So backs are going to be up against the wall already for these Royals. Had the best record in baseball in the regular season, but that doesn't guarantee anything in the playoffs. And we're going to find out whether Gordon Graceffo, who missed the last couple weeks of the regular season, hasn't pitched since early September, whether he'll be able to come through on October 2nd with a big performance for us. Graceffo definitely had a mixed year. The 12-8 record was fine. The 4.54 ERA, a little bit sloppy, put up a 2.3 WAR, 4.27 SIERA. So he is certainly number 4 of the 4 starters for us. And there's a chance that it's his last game for us because we do have a team option for $10 million for next season. Already mentioned that Jacobs is also going to be a free agent if we decide we want to keep Jacobs instead of Graceffo, or if we decide we want to keep Jacobs, we're going to have to let go of Graceffo to open up some money to potentially make an offer for Jacobs. So could be the last game ever in a Kansas City uniform for Gordon Graceffo. Reed Detmers, the 34-year-old on the mound, 12-13 record, 3.96 ERA over 193 1/3 innings. So, for the 4th straight game, a pretty solid matchup between the pitchers. The hope is that the Royals can get to Detmers early and often and push this series back to a deciding Game 5 in Kansas City. But that is not to be the case. And the season is over for the Royals. So the best regular season that we've had with this team, 104-58. Got off to a 1-0 lead in the ALDS, and then we lose 3 games in a row to the Angels. So the season is over. Dylan Cruz did hit a second homer in the game. Graceffo was fine. 3 runs, but only 2 earned over 6 2/3 innings. Diaz and Bosma pitched respectably in relief, but Detmers was really good with 1 run over 7 innings. We did get to Tolbert, but didn't get enough with only 2 earned runs. Looks like an error really cost us. Alvarado. Oh, that is brutal. Big error from a first baseman. And, Alvarado's got acceptable ratings for a first baseman. He is only 5'11", but I don't know that would cause him to make an error. You feel bad anytime an error really costs you, but when it's a lousy first baseman making an error, that really hurts. So, disappointing end to this postseason for the Royals, but it is what it is. You can't win them all. Let's see what the rest of the playoff tree looks like here. The Mariners down 2-1 to the White Sox. The Giants have already lost to the Cubs, and then the Nationals and the Diamondbacks are locked up 2-2. So it is conceivable with Kansas City and San Francisco already having lost, Seattle being down a game, and the Nats and the Diamondbacks being knotted up at 2-2. It's conceivable that the 4 100-win teams with home field advantage are all going to get knocked out in this division series round. We'll see whether that happens or not, but it definitely, with 2 of those teams already down, and I would think at this point at least one of the others likely to lose, certainly shows you the fickle nature of the playoffs in not just baseball, but in OOTP. And the Nationals did end up representing well as one of the 4 100-win teams and one of the 4 teams that had first-round byes. They're the only one that gets by. The Mariners, the Royals, and the Giants all lost their series 3-1. So the Nationals, Cubs, the Angels, and the White Sox are the only teams left at this point. The Nationals with 101 wins, the Cubs with 92, the Angels with 91, and the White Sox with 89. So with the Nationals having 9 more wins than any team that's left in the playoffs and home field advantage, you would think that they would have to be the favorites to go all the way at this point. And shows how much I know, because the Cubs took out the Angels 4-2, or the Cubs took out the Nationals 4-2. The Angels swept the White Sox, so it's going to be the Angels and the Cubs here in the 2033 World Series. And the Los Angeles Angels are your 2033 World Series champions. The Cubs were going for a repeat after beating the Red Sox in the World Series last year, but it was not to be. Angels really caught on fire in the playoffs. Took out the Twins 2-1, took out our Royals 3-1, swept the White Sox, and then beat the Cubs 4-2. So the LA Angels are your 2033 World Series champions. And before we get into the off-season, going to take a look at the top performers on our team and how we did. Got off to an incredible start. Played really well through May and June. July and August were kind of slow, only 3 games over 500 combined in those 2 months. But then we did finish very strong in September, 14-5, so we had a lot of momentum coming into the playoffs, but the Angels ended that momentum for us. Ended up 6th in the league in runs scored, as we talked about, but 1st in batting average, 1st in hits, 1st in extra base hits. Hardest team in the league to strike out, although we don't walk very much. 3rd in the AL in steals, middle of the pack in base running. Pitching was really good. 1st in the league in runs allowed, led the league in ERA, 1st in starter ERA, 2nd in bullpen ERA, 3rd in pitcher WAR, 3rd in hits allowed, 3rd in homers allowed, 4th in walks, 5th in strikeouts, 3rd in defensive efficiency, and 1st in zone rating. So it really was a excellent regular season for these Royals. Just did not get the job done in the playoffs. And as we start getting ready for the offseason, the Royals are going to look very similar next year. Not going to be a ton of turnover. As I mentioned, big decision for the offseason is whether to exercise the option on Gordon Graceffo. If we don't exercise the option on Gordon Graceffo, then the question is whether we want to make an offer to Zach Jacobs to try to bring him back. But other than that, just our closer, Matt Cronin, backup outfielder Junior Marin, and longtime reliever Mackenzie Gore, as well as AAA outfielder Nazir Muley, and then Alejandro Osuna, who we traded for near the trade deadline, are really the only players who are going to be free agents. So although we're not going to have a ton of money to spend potentially in the offseason, looks like about $6 million potentially for extensions, we do expect that hopefully we'll get a little bump in the budget. So we will have money to spend. Obviously, we can mess with the scouting and development budgets if we want to. So we can bring on a player or two if we need to. We can probably bring back a player or two if we need to. But the roster next season is going to look largely like the roster this year unless we happen to make a massive trade in the offseason. Bobby Witt Jr. and Dylan Cruz are still going to be back with the top two salaries on the team. And then after that, Borgman, Lagerwell, and Venasco, three of our starting pitchers, and Alex Vasquez is going to be making some money next year. And actually, that's where this money for extensions came up. I talked about this in the end of our last episode, and I could not quite figure out what had happened, and I'll explain it to you now. All of a sudden, about $6 million popped up eligible for extensions. And as I'm looking through the salaries, Alex Vasquez's arbitration number at one point was about $20 million for 2034, so it must have dropped by about $5 or $6 million, and that kind of opened up the money that we're now seeing that we potentially have for extensions. So I wonder what he'd be looking for in terms of a contract. $18.2 million as he heads into arbitration, so we'll get him back next year at a discount. Compared to where we thought we were going to be paying him close to $20 million. I don't know if he's going to be the long-term solution for us. Obviously, he's been an incredible bat over the years, but he's going to be pretty expensive. The only benefit is that Cruz will be coming off the books before his final arbitration season, and Bobby Witt Jr. could also potentially opt out then. So we will potentially have a ton of money if we decide that Vasquez is the right way to spend it in a season and a half, 2 years from now. And turning to the pitching stats for the year, we already talked about most of the frontline starters as we went through the playoff series, but Borgman, 13-5, 3.23 ERA, tied for the lead on the team in pitcher WAR with Zach Jacobs, who was 16-5 with a league best 3.03 ERA. Jacobs looking for over $20 million a year for 4 years. So for a 32-year-old who's fragile, who has been a really good pitcher for us with a 1.14 ERA plus and a 91 FIP minus over the course of his career, but coming off of a career year by any measure, whether we're looking at wins, whether we're looking at the fact that he led the league in ERA, led the league in walks per 9 innings for the second time in his career, put up his best ERA plus and his best FIP minus in a full season, 3.97 Sierra, the highest WAR of his career. The decision's going to come down to Jacobs or Graceffo in a way. We've got Graceffo locked up for $10 million for next year. He's not the pitcher that Jacobs is. He's also fragile. He's a year older, but he's going to cost half as much. So with the fact that we hopefully will have Ricky Venasco coming back to the starting rotation, there is definitely an argument to move on from Jacobs. Caleb Lagerwell, we talked about the 3.58 ERA is vintage Caleb Lagerwell. I just love looking at the stats for this guy because he is just so consistent. You can see this marked the 7th consecutive year that he started 33 games for us. And his ERAs in the 8 years that he's been with us have ranged from 3.07 to 3.86. Just Mr. Consistency, goes out and pitches starts every turn of the rotation for us, is kind of our second or third starter most years, and just goes out and does a really good job when he's pitching for us. So he's been a very valuable pitcher for us. Continue to be glad that we'll have him on the team. Tyler Bosma split time between the rotation and the bullpen, 12-6 record with a save after being our closer last year, 4.43 ERA. Not a vintage Tyler Bosma season, but still was an important player, particularly when Venasco went down with the injury and got hurt. Bob Williams, youngster who we picked up in the third round, I guess 7 years ago in the draft at this point. First full season in the majors and was really good. He started a couple games for us when we had some injuries. 9-1 record, 6 saves, 98 strikeouts over 82 and a third innings pitched, 2.50 ERA, 195 batting average against, and a 2.0 WAR with a 68 FIP minus. So Williams very effective, and he conceivably, depending on what we decide to do with Matt Cronin, could be the closer for us next year. Cronin 6-7 with those 40 saves, 2.64 ERA. Perdomo was splitting the year between Omaha and Kansas City, did put up a 2.09 ERA for the Royals this year. Ricky Venasco, we'll see what he looks like coming off of that torn UCL. He's already a fragile pitcher. He's not going to be back until probably May. And he's making a fair amount of money. I guess the one positive thing we have with Venasco, you may remember this, we've still got him the next 2 seasons at $11 million a year, but then we do have a team option in the final year of that contract that we gave him when we signed him a couple years back. So a little more optionality if he looks completely done coming back from that injury. Hopefully that won't be the case, because of the fact that we could lose Graceffo and or Jacobs out of the starting rotation. Venasco could have a big role for us next year. RJ Dabovich, vintage Dabovich season, 3.18 ERA, 75 strikeouts over 62 and a third innings pitched. Talked about Mackenzie Gore, didn't make the playoff roster. He's a free agent, probably will not be back unless his salary demands are very low. Picked up Alexis Diaz in a trade with the Dodgers. He was okay down the stretch. Jaden Woods split the year between Omaha and KC, was respectable. Bryce Hubbard was fine once he was back, although we will never forgive him for that poor performance in the playoff loss to the Angels. Dylan Lesko was okay after we picked him up from the Astros, 3.86 ERA. Easton Tumis missed most of the year with a torn rotator cuff, and we traded him away. Sandy Gaston, similar torn labrum, missed a big chunk of the season, and we traded him away also, approaching the trade deadline as we brought on those middle relievers. Heisel Barrow split the year between Omaha and Kansas City. That's kind of his role. And then Edgar Manzo was our Rule 5 guy. We had him on this team till July, sent him back to Houston, and it looks like he was pretty effective in 10 2/3 innings for Houston before he tore his labrum. So potentially have a little work to do in both the rotation and the bullpen this coming off season. We don't have a ton of young pitchers who are kind of at the AA, AAA level who are going to be able to potentially help us over the next year, year and a half. We did draft a lot of pitchers in the draft this year, but still probably 3, 4, 5, 6 years from those guys making an impact at the major league level. So we may have to use the trade market. We may have to use the free agent market. We may have to use the Rule 5 draft this offseason to bolster that pitching staff. And obviously the big decision that we're going to have to figure out is do we exercise the option on Graceffo, and or do we make an offer to Jacobs to try to lock him up before he hits free agency? We will have Borgman and Lagerwell back in the 1-2 slots in the rotation. But particularly with Mackenzie Gore moving on and the fact we traded away Easton Tumis, Borgman and Lagerwell are cemented into those 1 and 2 spots in the rotation. But right now, if we don't have Graceffo and Jacobs back, it's Tyler Bosma It's Ricky Venasco coming off of an injury. It's Jaden Woods. It's Bryce Hubbard as kind of the potential guys in those 3, 4, and 5 spots in the rotation. So tend to think that we need Graceffo and or Jacobs back. And if we don't bring either of them back, probably would look to add a pitcher in the offseason, a starting pitcher in the offseason. And turning to our everyday players, Bobby Witt Jr., really nice year. He unfortunately missed a little bit over a month with injuries. Probably will cost him the chance to be near the top of the MVP voting. Don't think he would have won the MVP award. He was in the top 3 last year, but still put up a 6.3 WAR despite only playing 123 games. Batted .305, 32 doubles, 17 homers, 39 stolen bases, 140 OPS plus. So just another solid vintage Bobby Witt Jr. season. Was already named an All-Star this year. Probably will be in the mix for another Gold Glove award this offseason, and maybe he'll add to the Silver Slugger award that he won last year. But got him again for next year at $36 million, and then he's got a player option to opt out. So, the Royals, without a doubt, we are going to be a team that is playing to win it all again next year, despite the disappointment of the playoffs this season, because it could, once again be our last year with Bobby Witt Jr. in this upcoming 2034 season. Already talked a little bit about the youngster Aragetto Laziosi, was second on the team with a 3.5 WAR, hit .313 as a rookie, third in the AL batting race, 29 doubles, 13 homers. Pretty versatile player, started a lot of games at second and third for us and even a few at shortstop. Feel pretty good defensively having him at second base or third base for us. You can see he still potentially can develop a little bit more with his home run power, his eye, and his avoiding strikeouts. So maybe he'll be even better next year. Looks like he's still got 2 days with that strained PCL. So even if the Royals had made it to the World Series, it was always unlikely that he was going to be back in time based on the timing of the injury, but it looks like we would not have had him anyways. Angelo Velasquez, the center fielder, who we have signed to a long-term extension, another solid year. Excellent defensive center fielder and a pretty good hitter too. Batted .300, .304 batting average. So after winning the batting title his first year in the majors, followed that up with .300 and .304 batting averages the last couple years. Not a lot of power. Did hit 33 doubles and 7 triples this year. 104 OPS plus, 103 WRC plus, and 3.4 WAR. Great personality in the clubhouse. Former number 1 draft choice of these Royals who has developed. So he should be manning the spot in center field for us for many years to come. Alex Vasquez, similar to Bobby Witt Jr., missed about a month with injuries. Vintage Vasquez season, again, there just wasn't enough. We would have liked to see him play another 30 games and hit another 120 at-bats, but 42 doubles, 22 homers, drove in 92 runs, .311 batting average, 150 OPS plus, 146 WRC plus. The dollars that he's making are starting to get high, but as long as we've got Bobby Witt Jr. here next year, Alex Vasquez and Dylan Cruz are both going to be part of that team as we try to win it all next year. Dylan Cruz, after missing the entire season with an injury, 2032, which would have been his first season with the Royals after we traded for him with the Red Sox, put up a solid year, 133 OPS plus, 128 WRC plus, kind of exactly what we would hope for from him. Obviously would love to have the season he had in 2031 in Boston, but weren't really expecting that. But a 288 batting average, 30 homers, drove in 87 runs, put up a 2.4 WAR, not a great defensive outfielder, and as we talked about in some of the previous episodes, Vasquez and Cruz are kind of splitting time at left field and DH. which hopefully helps them both stay healthy, although they both did miss some time this year. Angelo Bolden, the starting catcher who we signed to an extension in our last episode that buys out some of his free agent years. Batting average dipped to 257, and his OPS plus and his WRC plus a little bit below average for the year. Still a good personality, above average defensive catcher. Having him in our platoon with the youngster Leo Aveyar has worked out pretty good. Aveyar hit 302 as a rookie this year, only 162 at-bats. He is an excellent defensive catcher, although he does not have a great arm, durable. So with those two, feel like we are set at catcher for the next few seasons, most likely. Also feel that we're set at shortstop for a while with Tony Fonseca. Hit 261 for us, 82 OPS plus, 77 WRC plus, but still put up a 1.6 WAR. Excellent looking defensive shortstop. Looking at those fielding stats, defensive efficiency pretty strong. Zone rating 9.7, decent range for a shortstop. Decent fielding percentage. Hopefully he can continue to get better defensively. And also, hopefully, he can still get a little bit better offensively. But if he's a 260 hitter at the major league level, he's going to be a pretty useful player with those excellent defensive ratings. So he is, like Laziosi, one of the big rookies that we had this year. Aveyar was also a rookie who we talked about. Orlando Soto split the year between Omaha and Kansas City. He looks like is going to be an excellent fourth or fifth outfielder, can play pretty solid defensively at any position, great personality, hit 299 and 144 at-bats to us. Never going to get a ton of playing time with Angelo Velasquez in front of him, but I like the fact that Soto is durable. He can play any outfield position pretty well, and given that Velasquez's only normal injury proneness, there probably will be times when that durability of Soto is an asset for our team. So another rookie who I think will be playing a bigger role with the team next year. Aiden Harris, kind of a first baseman / second baseman, hit really well, 341 average in those 88 at-bats. Don't expect him to hit at that level going forward. He is 27 years old, although this was his major league debut. Probably not a huge part of the team for the long term, but could be a contributor for the next couple years. Willie Flores, another one of those rookie middle infielders, very versatile, can play just about any position pretty effectively on the diamond, good personality. Still developing as a hitter, though. Just turned 23 years old in September. And we did see a little bit of that at the major league level, although he hit 360 in limited action in AAA this year. Only ended up hitting 242 on the season. A little bit of pop with 10 homers and 24 doubles and 335 ribbies, and still can improve his contact, his gap power, his eye, his avoiding strikeouts. So still think that he's going to be a pretty important member of this team going forward, despite the fact that he had one of the weaker offensive seasons among the rookies on our team. Another rookie, Rich Alvarado, hit better, 285 with 8 homers, 30 doubles, and 417 at-bats. Good for a above-average OPS plus and WRC plus. Does not have the same defensive versatility as a Willie Flores, although he does have a better bat. But you just look at the numbers game we're playing, and that's why I say somebody like Aiden Harris isn't really a big part of our future, because we've got Flores, Alvarado, Fonseca, Laziosi, who all kind of play first, second, short. Obviously, Bobby Witt Jr. is still entrenched at third for next season and hopefully long after that. But if Witt Jr. does move on from us, or if we decide to move on from him at some point in the coming years, feel that we've got a lot of infielders, and one of them could definitely move over into that third base role. Another rookie, Ishmael Zavala, kind of looking like a fourth or fifth outfielder, hit 264 with 5 homers and 212 at-bats. Pretty average batting profile, but he's a better hitter than Nazir Muley, which is why he ended up being on the major league team. But when you look at the fact that for next season we've got Vasquez, Cruz, Velasquez, Soto already in the outfield, a spot for Zavala is not going to be the easiest thing to come by, because we also still have to decide what to do with Junior Marin, Alejandro Osuna, and then we also have the youngster Victor Aveyar, who will likely be on the major league team next year after hitting .281 with 27 homers and 103 ribbies in AAA. Actually, there's no doubt that he'll be on the major league team next year, given the financial position that we find ourselves in right now. There's no question that we're going to be looking to bring up Aveyar to the major league team and hopefully have him as our starter in left field or right field, depending on how things look with Vasquez, Cruz. So we will most likely be moving on from Alejandro Osuna, who we were talking about. Didn't hit great for us after we traded for him, was kind of disappointing. .258 batting average, which we could have lived with, but just 2 homers and 182 at-bats was not what we expected. And then also potentially we're going to be moving on from Junior Marin, who got off to a faster start this year, but still ended up hitting just .239. Did have 19 homers and 368 at-bats. But he's going to be 30 by the start of next season. He's fragile. I don't think he's looking for a ton of money. He's only looking for $4.8 million a year. But when we get into the numbers games with our outfield, you look at this team and we've got Velasquez in center. We've got Vasquez and Cruz manning left and DH. We're going to have Soto back as a outfielder, reserve outfielder. Zavala potentially back as a reserve outfielder. And then obviously the youngster Aveyar coming up. Probably not a lot of room for a Junior Marin or an Osuna to come back. And Nazir Muley, who struggled in the majors this year, hitting just .221 and 163 at-bats. Another outfielder who's been a reserve for us the last couple of years that probably will not be back next season. Last guy to mention, Juan Palomares, ended up spending a good chunk of the season down in Omaha, hit just .263 at the major league level. So he's a great personality in the clubhouse, and he had hit .309 his first full year in the majors, .292 last year, but that's dropped to .263 this year. And with the fact that he doesn't have much power and he doesn't really walk much, and he's not all that great defensively, he is a player who despite the fact that he's still only 26 years old, is going to be in the mix to be a AAA player next year. Fortunately, we still have one option year left with him, but guys like Palomares and who am I looking for here? Aiden Harris. Those two guys could be pretty solid 5th or 6th infielders on a lot of teams, but with the depth that the Royals have, they're going to be struggling just to make our roster next season. So I mentioned earlier that we're probably going to be looking to think about the pitching staff as the offseason begins. Certainly need to figure out what to do with Graceffo and Jacobs as far as the starting rotation. May look to add a relief pitcher. Feeling like we're kind of going to be running back the same kind of crew as far as the offense next year. No question, or there's always an option for us to do something in the offseason, but as I talked about, with Bolden and Aguiar, feel pretty good at catcher. When I look at the infield, we've got some combination of Alvarado, Flores, Fonseca, Laziosi, Bobby Witt Jr., and I'm probably missing somebody, but that's kind of the infield. There's kind of one spot up for grabs, which could be a Palomares, could be an Aiden Harris. And then the outfield, as I talked about in DH, left field and DH are covered with Vasquez and Cruz. Center field is covered with Velasquez. Right field is going to be covered with the rookie coming up. And then our backup outfielders are likely going to be Soto and Zavala. So we're going to be letting go a lot of people. Junior Marin, $4.8 million isn't horrible for a fourth outfielder who's got some pop, but he's been in the majors long enough at this point. We know what he is. 102 OPS plus, 98 WRC plus, has put up a 4.5 WAR over almost 2,800 at bats. He does have some power with those 145 home runs, but he's going to be 30 years old and he's a fragile player. And with the fact that we've got Zavala is a backup outfielder already, a little more consistent bat, but not the same kind of power. We're going to be having Orlando Soto also as a backup outfielder. Again, not the same power, but much better defensively, good personality, a lot of speed on the base paths. And then, of course, Aveyar, who looks like he does have as much power potentially as Junior Marin and also hopefully can hit for a higher batting average. Just don't see any need to bring back Junior Marin. And certainly I would think that Osuna is going to be looking for even more money than Marin would be. Yeah, he's looking for $24 million a year. So we brought him on board, hoped he would help us win a title this year, didn't give up all that much for him. Obviously didn't work out in the way he performed and the way the team performed, but I just don't think we need to do a lot to our everyday roster. So I think as we get ready for the off season, it's going to be figuring out what we need to do with the pitchers. And as we prepare for the start of the off season, we've talked about needing to make the option decision on Gordon Graceffo. Do we want to pay him $10 million next year or give him the buyout of $1 million? Reliever Alexis Diaz, as we expected, did not meet the vesting option. Review of season goals. He's a little disappointed we didn't win it all, but respects us. Unhappy with our performance in accomplishing the goals. Unhappy with on-field and front office management. So kind of don't know what else we can do to keep Isaiah Moore happy. I think we've made the playoffs 8 of the last 9 seasons while winning a couple world championships. That seems like a pretty good performance from a mid-market team like the Royals, but he's always looking for more. Ooh, looking at the new budget, $242 million. Is that an increase or not? He decreased the budget on us despite the fact that we made a lot of money last year. And I guess the profit was only $5.3 million, but it's still a higher profit than the $3.1 million we made the year before. So I honestly wasn't expecting that the budget was going to be cut for only the second time since we've been running the Royals. So we don't have a ton of money for extensions. So that's going to make the offseason a little more interesting. As I talked about, we don't really have to do much to the everyday players. I think with the veterans we have signed and the youngsters that are on low contracts, we're in a pretty good spot there. And we can certainly open up some more money if we lower our scouting and development budgets. But scouting and development have been so critical to what we've been able to do over these 12 seasons that we've been running the Royals that I don't think I want to totally throw in the towel on investing heavily in those areas right now. Hitting coach retired, and manager Byron Nichols has retired, so that is going to be a big hit. And pitching coach Brian Conger has retired, so we've got a lot of big decisions to make this offseason. Top prospect list, it looks like Maxim De La Cruz is third, so he's fallen from first to second to third over the last couple of years. not the end of the world. He did get up in A-ball towards the end of last year as a 19-year-old, hit 370 in very limited action after hitting 332 in rookie ball. So still looks like he can be a brilliant contact hitter with plus power. Not a lot of speed, and ultimately, going to have to figure out whether we want him as a corner outfielder, maybe a first baseman, but still the number 3 prospect in baseball, and played really well in 57 games, a little over 200 minor league at-bats between 2 levels last season. So good to see him still among the top 5 prospects in the game. Off-season beginning, arbitration beginning, posted players from Japan and Korea to think about. So it's going to be a very busy off-season for these Royals, made busier by the fact that we're going to be looking for a new manager and a new pitching coach. Byron Nichols had that brilliant run after we promoted him to be our manager. Let's pull up his profile just to see exactly what he did with us. He was our bench coach from the start for the first 4 seasons of this playthrough, and then the last 8 seasons of this playthrough he's been our manager. And you can see made the playoffs 7 of those 8 seasons as our manager, won 2 World Series, and also won 4 Manager of the Year awards. So Nichols, with an incredibly successful run as the manager of the Kansas City Royals, didn't get a shot at being a manager till he was in his 60s, but certainly over those 8 years put up a Hall of Fame-ish type resume with 7 World Series appearances, a couple World Series championships, and as I said, 4 Manager of the Year awards. So a really great run for Byron Nichols as a manager, and that's going to leave a big hole on the team. I mentioned that Brian Conger also had retired as pitching coach. You may remember from last offseason that we do have a brilliant young pitching coach in the organization in Yimi Capio Rodriguez, who we were able to keep last year by promoting him from rookie ball to high A ball. But you look at him, he's outstanding at teaching pitching, legendary at handling aging, good at development, excellent at mechanics. And you can see he's had a pretty successful year in rookie ball and high A ball in the time that he's been a pitching coach for us, although the ERA in A ball this year was not incredibly impressive. But he is certainly a player who we could potentially promote to the major league pitching coach. But we've got good coaches throughout our organization. You look at AAA and Daniel Moscos, and excellent at pitching, good with development, mechanics, and aging. He's requesting a promotion. I didn't check. Capio's not requesting a promotion yet, but it's possible someone will try to bid him away. Tony McKnight down in AA, also a really good pitcher, excellent at teaching pitching, outstanding with development, excellent mechanics, good with aging. So we've got a lot of options internally to kind of fill that pitching coach role. We're going to have to figure out how to fill the manager role. Bobby Crosby, who's been our bench coach, would be one logical step. Really good relationships generally with the team, pretty good with development and mechanics. We've had a pretty consistent coaching staff for these past several years, and that's led to a group that really works together well. Nobody struggles with each other. Some of the players or some of the coaches work really well together. Want to kind of keep that cohesion high. So there's a lot for us to think about as this off-season begins, not just on the field, but also in the dugout with the coaching staff. And you can see we don't have a ton of openings right now at the minor league level, but we could certainly create some if we shift people up in the organization to fill some of those roles at the major league roster. So it's going to be a very busy offseason for the Royals, even busier than I had anticipated with the fact that Nichols has left as manager. So it's going to be a fun one, a lot to do, and unfortunately with the fact that our budget got cut a little bit this year, we're not going to have a lot of money to make a lot of changes. So the first critical decision we've got to think about, and we'll focus on at the start of our next episode, is what do we do with the Gordon Graceffo option, and what do we do with Zach Jacobs? Probably need at least one of them back in the starting rotation next season. It's going to be impossible to have both of them given the financial situation that we're in. I guess the only way that we could, think about having them both on the team would be to trade away a Borgman or a Lagerwell, which we don't want to do. That's just creating one hole. We're opening up money to fill a hole that we already have, but trading away one of our top two pitchers is just going to be creating another hole to do that, so we wouldn't want to do that. If there was a bid for Ricky Venasco at $11 million a year, coming off of a torn UCL where he's going to be missing the start of next year, that would be something to think about. I just can't imagine that anyone's going to be interested in offering us much of anything for Ricky Venasco coming off an injury. Yep, no team offers a single player in the trade. Now, I'm not looking at veterans. I'm sure if I shop him for veterans only, we can get a crappy contract of an aging and injured player in return, and actually we can't even do that. So we look to be stuck with Venasco right now. Again, if he's performs the way he has over the course of his career, certainly don't mind having him for $11 million for next year. I guess at some point, given the fact that he's already fragile, though, and he's coming off of a severe injury, there is a chance when he starts that rehab assignment, probably around next April or May, that he may not look like the same pitcher that we think he is right now, since he hasn't pitched at the major league level since May 12th. But we will focus on figuring all of that out in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.